What is the vertical line test? Well, the vertical line test is used when you want to determine whether a curve on a graph is a function or not. So let's draw a graph, and we have our x and our y, and if I can draw a vertical line anywhere on the graph and it only intersects the curve once, then the curve is a function, because by definition a curve on a graph is a function of x if the vertical line intersects the curve once and only once. Remember, a function, with a function you are supposed to only get a single output for every input, which means for every x, you're only supposed to have one fx for every x and one y for every x, essentially. So based on what we know, let's have a look at some examples. All examples I have gotten, or have used or drawn up on a graph have been from Desmos. You should check them out, they're pretty cool. So here we have example 1, and we just have a pretty average curve, and if we draw vertical lines all through it, we notice that it only intersects, the lines only intersect the curve once. So by definition, this curve is a function, because for every y value for every x value there is one y value. Now for example 2, we have another curve, and if we draw vertical lines just like what we did before, and we draw where the vertical lines intersect the curve, we notice on each vertical line they intersect the curve twice, which means that for every x value there are two y values. So by definition this curve is not a function. And example 3, the same thing. We have ourselves a curve, and let's see if it's using the vertical line test. So we notice that they only intersect the curve once, which means that this curve is a function, because one y value for every x value. Now for example 4, we have a bit of a loop, and notice that on the first 3 lines it only intersects the curve. It only intersects the curve once, which is good, but on the 4th line it intersects the curve 3 times, which means that on the 4th line there is 3 y values for that x value. So by definition this curve is not a function of x. But a way you can get around this is by essentially splitting it up. If you can split them up, and you do so like this, you split them up into these 3 sections, you can draw vertical lines, and you notice that it only intersects the curve, each vertical line only intersects each of these 3 separately once, which means that each of these 3 separately are technically functions of x, but together they are not. So hopefully these examples helped. Basically with the vertical line test you just need to know that if the line passes through the curve, if it passes from negative y all the way up to positive y, just a vertical line through, and it passes through a curve and only passes through the curve once, then it is a function. If it passes through more than once and passes through a bunch of lines, then it is not a function. Okay, well, thanks for watching. I hope this video helped, and see you around.